Hello, everyone. Welcome to It's a Wonderful Podcast. The trailer for Avengers Doomsday has come out this week to admittedly a little bit of mixed reviews, it seems,
Yeah.
Janine. Mixed
Yeah.
reactions. People aren't quite sure where they stand on it, but ultimately, this is to determine where we may stand on this. This may not be the first time we have seen the trailer. This will not be an immediate first time reaction, but we haven't really had much of a chance to talk to each other in somewhat length about
Yeah.
this trailer and where the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe currently lies in our minds, because this is an area of movies that's quite precious to It's a Wonderful Podcast, given that it was
Yeah.
the first ever series of Morgan Hasn't Seen, was a
Yes.
catch-up of some early MCU movies in preparation for Infinity War, I believe. It was that long ago.
No, I think it was Endgame.
Was
It
it
ended up being
Endgame?
It was Endgame. Yeah. Because I went back because I've been doing my Marvel rewatch and I've been then going and listening to our episodes that
I
we
see.
did for those specific movies. So I do believe it was for Endgame. And then we
Which
did
is
do
still
an
quite a
episode
while ago.
on Endgame. Yes. And it was literally meant to be just a one-off series because you and me were talking and you had mentioned that you were going to be going into this culmination film without having seen a single Iron Man movie. You missed
Yeah.
the first two Thor films and you hadn't seen the Incredible Hulk. So I was like, I think you kind of need to see those to really maybe get a more rewarding experience out of this film that is a culmination of where this series began. I was right, of course. So
Well, obviously.
so it was just gonna be a one-off. We were gonna talk those films, Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, Thor and Thor: The Dark World, and The Incredible Hulk, and then we were gonna close it off with an episode talking about Endgame and your thoughts now that you had seen those films.
Yeah.
But then, as we, were discussing more, I found more films that you really hadn't seen. So
And
then we
now,
decided yes, so we decided why not just keep doing this because there's a lot of movies Morgan hasn't seen. And so the MCU was literally the birth of Morgan Hasn't Seen as a podcast. So yeah, we are very kind of precious about, the MCU's connection to us as podcasters.
yes.
And a show that we've been doing for a really long time started with that. So yeah, I was
And look,
really
it
interested
turns out,
to discuss this with you. Yeah.
yes, and look, it turns out as well that, I've fallen back
Yet
into old
again.
ways. Through,
Yeah.
I don't believe my fault either. I believe this is the production's fault. This isn't my doing. I haven't been overly enthused about the
Yeah,
MCU for some
the fatigue
years
hits
now.
you a little bit,
The
yes.
fatigue hit me definitely. The odd thing has got me coming back. I'll be going watching Spider-Man Brand New Day. I'm still very much into that. But there has been a selection of movies over the last few years that, again, I've not taken the time out to go and watch from the MCU. So upcoming in December, ready for Avengers Doomsday, we will be doing a Road to Doomsday catch-up MCU
Yeah.
series on Morgan Hasn't Seen as well. So
Yeah.
it's a nice return to the
Bookend.
MCU for Morgan
Yeah.
Hasn't Seen. It would be nice. I mean, you say bookend. Does this mean the end of Morgan Hasn't Seen? No, it doesn't.
No,
So
definitely not, but it like ending
bookend,
the year, so
end of the
from, like,
year.
its inception and then ending this year with that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
will feel very nice to
Full
do.
circle.
So, as I
Yeah.
said, this isn't the first time we've seen this trailer, so we're going to play the trailer. We're going to see what we all think of it generally, and
Mhm.
maybe just let's have a little bit of a discussion, because there's a lot to unpack really in the
Yeah.
grand contextual schemes of things. So where we are, let's get it up. No, that's too big.
Alright.
There we go.
Something's coming. is done, we shall be faced with an unthinkable decision.
I've fought with many warriors in my time. They were far stronger than all of us put together, and they died. They died facing enemies and threats that scared me far less than this one. Everything that they sacrificed will be for nothing if we do not stand together. Put aside your petty squabbles. Presume nothing except this. If you return, you will return as brothers and sisters. But mark my words. We're going to need a miracle.
Hey, pal.
It's not possible.
There we go. With the
Yeah.
trailer. Firstly, I'd like to point out Infinity Vision isn't a proper way of watching a movie, so that's just a made-up nonsense.
It is.
Which,
It's literally just a format that already exists, and so, like, it's
like,
basically just it's like trying to certify that this film is gonna be shown in, like, those very specific formats, like Dolby, like, the screen size has to be this amount, and the sound quality has to be this amount. So it's not adding anything, it's literally
no,
just saying we're gonna show it in these already existing formats, because
which
they
I'm
were
sure
quick
everybody was
enough
aware
to
of
trigger.
anyway.
Yes.
Here is
So
just a tiny little nitpick about why, while obviously it's going to be nice to see certain characters in this movie and
mhm,
together and doing what have you, as it always has been with the MCU, that little tiny point of presented in Infinity Vision, I actually genuinely think speaks to the much wider flapping around of production about the current MCU, because they are just literally trying to throw everything in the kitchen sink at the Marvel Cinematic Universe still, and to try and see what lands. This was never the case with this world.
yeah,
This was never the case with this production. It became like that through a couple of factors. COVID didn't help. Jonathan Majors didn't help. But,
yeah,
we had to retangle everything. And instead of
yeah,
just taking the time to sit and figure out a totally new thing, they stuck to their original like slate plan and just
yeah,
messed everything about a bit, which has caused
yeah,
confusion. I am sure that the general audience are still fairly excited to go and watch all these movies. I'm sure they do. They don't do badly, do they still? So
no,
not
no, unless
one
you're
of
the
them.
Marvels, but
Well, I suppose Marvels didn't do great, did it?
yeah, yeah,
Um, Probably the weakest, financially, but does that really
yeah,
matter in the grand scheme of things? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
yeah,
the messy feeling of the current MCU. And while there are elements of that trailer that I'm like, okay, this is looks enjoyable. This looks like something I'm going to be interested in. Chris Hemsworth doing an awful lot of heavy lifting,
Yeah,
and I'm
as the kind
more
of
than happy
final
for I'm more than
Avenger.
happy for Thor and Chris Hemsworth to be doing an awful lot of heavy lifting here.
Yeah.
But really, in the grand scheme of things, how are they explaining the return of Steve Rogers? Because I am the biggest Steve Rogers fan. I
Yeah.
love Steve Rogers, and what an ending he had in
Yeah.
Endgame. So what a perfect arc that was.
Cart
So
Yeah, to
why
cart him back out again, like,
why are we
what
carting
are we
him back
doing?
out? And why the hell does Chris Evans want to do it? What have they
Yeah.
given him? What have they given him? Because he's
Y
not
yeah.
he's not a sort of cheap guy, is he? And I'm not talking about financially. He's not somebody that's just going to come and do this for the sake of doing it. He liked where Steve Rogers as a character ended up and was
Mhm.
happy with that whole arc.
Yeah.
So what's this? Why is he
Yeah.
there? And how
That's a good question.
logistically in the world is he there as well? There's an awful lot of questions. I feel like I don't know how well it's going to play as a team fighting Doomsday, Doctor Doom, the character.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about Doctor Doom prior to this movie? Not really.
No,
I'm
not
led to
really.
believe there's a little bit in Fantastic Four, but that's one of the movies I haven't seen
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
So it's not like the last time we had a big, grand Avengers
Build up to
villain,
this villain. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
lasted, I believe, 6 years was the
Yeah.
full narrative of Thanos.
Yeah.
So what's going on here? We're throwing somebody as noticeably and as notably powerful as
Mhm.
Doctor Doom, if you know anything about Doctor Doom from culture, massively powerful villain, but
Yeah.
where he's been to build up to what he's doing here? He hasn't been anywhere. So we're getting all of that in this. Is it going to land?
Yeah, I 100% agree that that's where a lot of, I think most people's and my reservations are coming from. Um, yes, I think I saw a video of somebody saying like, people are talking about that there was no setup to this. But they just weren't paying attention or they forgot. And he goes through this whole montage of different films that mention and talk about the multiverse and incursions. So,
The multiverse, sure.
sure.
I'm not.
And
I'm
this is
agreeing
what
with that.
Yes. So that sets up at least that aspect of like we've built up to talking about incursions and multiverses so we kind of understand what that looks like. So that generally is kind of what this plot is going to be. So we have at least a nugget of that, but then how does Doom fit in? What is he the one who wants this to happen and comes out of from wherever he's from because he sees this happening and sees it as an opportunity to do what? And so all
Well,
we really have
exactly.
to
That
go
is the
off
point. To
of
do what?
yes, and what do all we have to go off of is Downey's words of new mask, same task. So presumably it's related
Yeah.
to a task that is very similar to what Tony wanted, which was to put a suit of armor around the world. So if we're having multiple worlds encroaching on each other and that's bringing him out and his task is related to wanting to put a suit of armor around a world, why and
Yeah.
how? And so yeah, it leaves a lot of questions as to kind of and this villain insert is a course correction from Kang. So are we
Yes.
going to give with all of the characters in this movie, are we going to give this enough time to establish clearly and breathably his motivations? It is kind of my
I
biggest
just doubt it.
concern.
I just
Yeah, so
really
that is my
doubt we
biggest
are.
concern. Yeah, yes, because if his motivations in this first film of this, kind of iteration of things, um, is that going to be enough time to really flesh something like this out with the amount of
Yeah.
characters? And is it going to feel like, and then when we delve into like the amount of characters, are we going to
Yeah.
get actual plot or are we just going to be getting moments?
Well,
So
exactly. It feels like it will be a moments movie. And I think this was some people's reservations with, the last two Avengers movie, or
Mhm.
certainly Infinity War, because we hadn't seen something on the level of Infinity War before.
Yeah.
That it was an absolutely monumentally massive, massive movie. It was very
Yeah.
long, and it had everybody that had been in the MCU up to that point,
Yes. I mean,
which was a
even
lot,
characters we
which was a
forgot
lot of
about,
people.
and even side
Especially, yeah,
characters.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. But what the public had in 2018 was full confidence in Marvel as
Yeah.
a production. What the
And
public
10
no longer
years
has in
of setup.
2026 and 10
Yeah.
years of setup, what it no longer has in 2026 is full confidence in Marvel as a production. And it
Yeah.
looks like you're putting more characters than were even in this, because you've got all the Fox X-Men, you've got the Fantastic Four, you've got these three worlds smashing together, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, contextually, okay, these are some of the movies I've missed and what we're doing in our upcoming Morgan Hasn't Seen
Yeah.
series. But I like the Fox X-Men. I'm not bothered that the Fox X-Men are there. I've always liked the Fox X-Men.
Yeah.
They're good movies, they're good character. I like them. So I'm
Mhm.
there going, it will be nice to see these people in. And obviously in that
Yeah.
trailer we see Channing Tatum as Gambit as well, the long teased
Yeah.
Channing Tatum as Gambit,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I know appeared in Deadpool and Wolverine, despite me
Yes.
not having seen that movie yet.
Yeah.
So those are fun things. I don't necessarily love the fact that we're dragging Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen back out to do this in their 80s. Just let them do what they do. They really
Yes.
want to be doing
So, I mean,
this?
is it going to be a case? I mean, we see Cyclops shooting that like tragic looking blast. So, is this going to be like the killing, the destroying, the destruction of this X-Men world? Because obviously we're going into getting a
Yeah,
new X-Men. They've even announced, I think,
yeah,
that the director of Thunderbolts is going to be directing this
an
new X-Men
X-Men
movie.
movie.
Yes, and teases about casting have been happening. So, are we using this incursion thing, because I think it's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where we learn about incursions, are basically destroying of one world crashing into another, destroying it. So is
Yeah,
this like our official, we're carting these guys out for the last time as this iteration of these characters because we're destroying the X-Men universe of the 2000s. So I mean that would make sense if, this is why we're seeing these characters, because we are going to be going into our MCU's iteration of the X-Men. So
yeah.
I
I
mean, that
just seem
makes
to
sense.
remember watching the trailer for Infinity War and being like, oh damn, oh, and
Yeah,
I know everything. I know what everything means here. There just
yeah,
feels like, and I honestly don't think this is just because I've not watched some of the movies, because
yeah,
what do the Fantastic Four do in this trailer? They meet a few people, and
yeah,
we see, I think, Johnny Storm and Sue uh, embracing each other. And we
yeah,
see, Mr. Fantastic walk through a door. That's it. They don't really do anything in this trailer, do they?
yeah,
So I'm not missing any context there. I don't feel like I'm missing any context in terms of where characters are from this trailer. And I just seem to remember back in watching the Infinity War trailer, I feel like if I hadn't have caught up, I would have missed things. I feel like if I
yeah,
hadn't have known things, I would not have understood why certain people were with certain people, why certain people were wherever they are. I feel
yeah,
like that's not the case now. There's also quite a lot of noticeable omissions from this trailer. Like, where is Doctor Strange? Where is Spider-Man? Where is Hulk?
yeah.
These people aren't here. There's a lot of characters that actually aren't in this
Yeah,
trailer. Are they
everyone who's
going to be
in
in this movie?
yes, and was there like a purposeful omission of them because they maybe their presence or knowing they were gonna be in this movie would spoil things in Brand New Day? So
Possibly.
So you
Because
never
obviously
know. And
Banner is gonna be in Brand New Day, isn't he? So
exactly, as
we've
well.
seen that.
So, and if we're led to believe that Sadie Sink is playing Jean Grey, she is going to be the first X
Yes.
person from this universe that we see, presumably.
Do you not think? Do
So,
you not think at this point? I know we're obviously having this fun little bit of a tangential
yeah.
conversation here. Do you not think at this point it would just be a massive anticlimax if Sadie Sink just was Jean
What
Grey? Because everybody just thinks she is
figures?
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what they do with her. Because Amy
Yeah.
Pascal has been saying, like, we did something different with this, and we're really excited with how it turned out. So I'm like, so I don't know if that means a new iteration of this character or it's not her at all. I don't know. Um, but yeah,
We'll
so
see
maybe
soon enough.
their omission, yeah, so maybe their omission is just to speak to um not spoiling anything in Brand New Day. Because, also, I think I don't know if it's on the Marvel account or Robert Downey Jr.'s account, there were postings of, like, images that maybe tease some things. Like, there was a picture of, like, a kid's drawing of Doom with a child, like a kid's drawing, like,
Mm,
me and daddy or something. So,
mm.
is he going to have a child in this film? And that's maybe part of his motivations. There was also, like, a Happy Easter with all these different with Doom's head and like a basket of Easter eggs, and the Easter eggs had like different character symbols of all the characters that are going to be in this movie. But there was also a Doctor Strange and a Spider-Man Easter egg in the basket. So
Okay.
so there are kind of teases of things, and obviously, we know that they have no problem having these actors straight up lie and say they're not in something with Spider-Man,
True.
No Way Home.
True.
So there are possibilities of, people being in this film that, didn't get a chair and are just going to be a surprise twist thing. Um, and we just kind of went through something similar with Scream 7, that they added all of these nostalgic characters from the franchise, and it immediately felt icky, like this, we're just going to throw fan service in your face so you don't
Yeah.
know that we don't really have a good plan here. And the
I
movie
do
proved
really
to
worry.
not and the movie proved to be awful and not really have a good plan, and wasted the little fan servicing that they tried to distract us with. So, I mean, I feel like they had a pretty decent amount of time since the Majors fallout to figure something else out. I feel like they had more time than maybe Scream had, so I'm, like, holding on to that kind of glimmer. But
And
there
it's
were
obviously a
things that
much generally, in the grand scheme of things, it's a far bigger product than Scream. Like,
Of course,
no
of course.
disservice to Scream,
Oh, no,
but it
no, but
really is.
yes, but I think this is, like, the closest example I can think of a scandal screwing up their plans and them having to course
Yeah.
correct, and them using fan service and all these characters and, throwing a bunch of stuff that they know fans love to kind of distract from the scandal, and also, like, make them excited about this thing that had a big boo-boo. So,
I want this to
you
be
know
so good. I want this to be so good. I want it to be this
Yeah,
reset. I want the
yeah,
Russos are promising it's going to be a reset now. I want
yeah,
this to be a turning point back in the favor for this world, because this is a world and millions of other billions, frankly, of other
yeah.
people across the world just have so much heart in the game
Yeah,
of this, don't we?
exactly.
We don't want nobody
Years of
wants to
investment.
see
Yeah,
nobody wants to see the Marvel Cinematic Universe go out on a
fall
whimper.
apart.
You need,
Yes.
any good athlete, retire at your peak, not not when you're like 42 and are slowing down and have lost your legs and you can't run anymore. You
Yeah.
know, I don't want to see the MCU limp. And if this movie isn't great, I'm being perfectly honest, if this movie is not great, you're in for some serious trouble, because this is a
This
serious
is a
limp
big
now. This
thing.
isn't
Yes.
just one little movie a la the
No.
Marvels here and there that didn't do so
Yeah,
well.
exactly. This is a big build up kind of movie. And this is also in and of itself a setup for something else, because then, this is a setup for Secret
Yeah.
Wars. So this
Yeah, which is
isn't a
only next year, isn't
culmination.
it?
Yeah, so even though it has this same kind of big coming together quality of Endgame, it's not the end of um a phase. It is the beginning
No.
of a phase. So yeah, there are some concerns, but I have been doing my Marvel rewatch, and I think that's been helping me get a little more excited about this than I think I would have, not having started watching those films again.
I
I'm
mean, I
kind of
certainly think when I
recapturing.
get the context of
Yeah.
those, those missed movies in our Morgan Hasn't
Mhm.
Seen December series, Road to Doomsday, there'll be more enthusiasm from me. I am
Yeah.
I'm not overly enthused at the moment, but there are, as I said, certain elements in here that I'm going to enjoy watching on screen, even if it's just a 3-minute scene and a moment, even if it's just a series of little fun to me
Yeah.
moments. I'm going to enjoy watching those. And then I'm going to come out of the movie going, well, that really wasn't a complete movie, but you know what?
Yeah.
I
I
liked
had fun
that.
with this
And I
and this and
liked
that.
that.
Yes, because I mean, even the movies that we're gonna be watching in this Road to Doomsday for you to catch up, like, I think all of them are solid. Like, they did have mistakes, they weren't perfect, but they all had things in there that I really enjoyed, and I wouldn't call any of them really bad.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I did
like,
not
I would
hear
watch.
great stuff about Deadpool and Wolverine, but maybe that's just because it was a little bit
I
all over
mean,
the place.
it was super successful, and it does
It
play,
was.
funnily enough, a lot into kind of things we're gonna see. We're seeing the TVA, obviously, Gambit is
Yes.
coming into the mix. Um, uh, we're actually getting characters from the TVA, like characters that we've seen in Loki and things like that
Yeah.
in Deadpool and Wolverine. So, yeah, it factored in far more than, like, I expected it to, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I would watch probably all of these films before I might watch some of the films in, like, the regular like, in the solid, quote, unquote, "solid" era of the MCU. Like, I'd probably
Yeah.
watch all 5 of those movies before I watch Doctor Strange, or before I would want to watch, like, Doctor
Okay.
Strange, like, the first Doctor Strange again, or Captain Marvel,
Okay.
because, like, those are kind of some of my least favorite in the
Okay.
MCU, or for the Dark World, but, of course, I'm gonna watch everything because 'cause I'm doing this big rewatch. But, yeah, so I think you will enjoy these movies. I think it'll help maybe get you hyped for kind of things that are going to be in this movie. I think it'll help, just like, at the very beginning of Morgan Hasn't Seen, those helped you enjoy Endgame.
Yeah.
But it's also a case of, like, you don't really know what we're looking at here with
No,
this,
we
you
don't.
know?
We really
Yes.
don't. And do you know what? I hope it confuses the characters in the movie as much as it's confusing us, the viewer, because then at least it will make sense and will force explanations that I hope then don't feel clunky. There's one
Yes.
particular element I find absolutely fascinating as a potential to happen. Does Thor meet Loki again? Because that's
Yes.
gonna kill him.
That's going to be a huge
That's gonna
emotional gut punch
destroy
thing.
him.
Yes, especially because of, like, this iteration of him. We've seen him get emotional about what he's done and his brother and all of these things in Loki. So to have them kind of have this reunion.
It's
Um,
gonna destroy
you
them
mentioned.
both, isn't it, really? Something like that.
Yes.
Well,
Yes, it would be a huge emotional thing, that I think this movie needs. It needs kind of at least those strong emotional core
yeah,
moments with characters who we would love to see kind of come back together again.
yeah,
You mentioned, like, what is Steve doing here? Yeah, that is a really great question. Why would they drag him out? So, there are theories and things. I've watched a couple breakdowns. They show a hand holding Loki's TVA badge. The hand has a wedding ring. Who has a wedding ring? Steve has a wedding
okay.
ring. So maybe Steve's choice, while a beautiful choice, is what screwed everything up and is maybe causing this incursion. So somehow
Maybe.
Loki or some TVA situation is gonna have to go to Steve and be like, Sir, your choice is kind of messing everything up. So we need you to figure things out." They're also being very clear about not showing him in any kind of Captain America suit, any Captain
No.
America shield, any Captain America anything. He's just regular, degular Steve Rogers. Even in like the little concept art picture, he's regular, degular Steve
Yeah.
Rogers. And so, there's also a concern there that he's going to suit up in some way and take the shine off of Sam. And I think
Well,
that's a
he
worry for
shouldn't be
people.
doing
And I
that.
love that people are worried about that and worried about Sam, even though, I think people weren't a huge fan of that Captain America movie. There were a lot of great elements in it, but there were also some pretty messy elements. But him as Captain America, I think he was great. So yeah, there's that concern as well. Is him being in this film, what is he going to be doing? And is it going to be pulling anything away from Sam, taking up that mantle? Is it going to be addressed? Is there going to be a situation with Steve and Bucky and Sam, and that reunion as well is going to be really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot.
so yes, so there's a lot here that is just kind of up in the air, but then I'm also kind of like, we don't know. But then I feel like people would complain if it showed you too much. So I'm kind of glad that it didn't really show too much. Because then that would be the complaint. So people just, can never really be happy with things.
Well,
I'm
no, I
really,
suppose so.
yes. So yes, I am very much cautiously optimistic. There were some cool things that I saw in here. There's some things that are leaving a lot of questions. My concern, I think our concern that we, through discussing this is just, is it going to feel like a rushed thing? Are they going to be able to set up this character's motivations and make us care and really feel the stakes of this in its runtime, having this be kind of the technically second, but first time we're actually getting to know this version of Doctor Doom? Are they going to be
Yeah.
able to make us care about the stakes and his motivations in that time? And, are we going to get time with these characters without it just feeling like moments? Is that going to be rushed? And are we going to be able to get all the information we need in creative ways and not just lazy exposition dump scenes where everybody's standing
Yeah.
around? Because somebody kind of compared it to the finale of Stranger Things, where you have so many characters and there's so many scenes of people just standing around talking. And it feels like there's the chance that could happen here, because I feel like, you talked about seeing the Fantastic Four just kind of coming into rooms. That feels like what is going to be a lot of Reed's purpose, because he's the smart guy, he's the scientist, he is displaced from his world. When you watch his film, you'll see they were having problems with their world kind of coming apart. So if he's coming in to every scene and just blah 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 explaining, that's not going to be any fun either. So I'm hoping for clever ways of giving us the information we need, as opposed to just long exposition dump scenes. And are we ultimately going to get to see these characters, while in conflict at first, realize that they do have to kind of come together?
I mean,
And
we have to. We have to see that.
Yes. And are they going to meet a perfect balance with Thor? Are we going to get the kind of more serious, but like, Thor that we were getting in his original films, mixed with a little bit of the Taika version, and him feeling like a true leader? Because I don't know that I fully cared for how they made a joke of his serious, deep trauma in Endgame.
No.
I don't know that I
No.
liked that. Upon rewatch, sure, it was funny and all these things, but I didn't care for it, make them he and then Thor Love and Thunder made him a complete joke. So
Well,
I'm liking that I like
you
that we're
need an
pulling it back.
Infinity War style of Thor. That was the ultimate Thor, I think. So
Yes.
it looks like that again. That's
Yeah, they're
one
definitely
specific
pulling him
character.
back. Yes, and it seems like he's kind of leading things. So in terms of him
Yeah.
leading things, having a foot in both eras to kind of be that kind of anchor point, I think is kind of a cool idea. I think that really works. So I'm kind of curious to see like where he sits in kind of bringing everybody together, because that's what it feels like he's doing. So I kind of like that idea that he's the character doing that. And we'll see kind of how that plays out. one of the things people were concerned about that I think is one of the things people are actually I haven't heard a single really complaint about is Doom's accent. So how do you feel about that? You know,
Yeah.
not a
I,
huge bigger picture thing, but like a thing that
no,
people were kind of concerned about. But I think it's the one
listen.
thing people are actually kind of saying, not bad. I kind of think it works.
Well, listen, I don't mind closing this little discussion
Yeah.
out with this, to be honest with you, because you say you've not heard a complaint about it. Here comes the complaint about it. What is
No.
it? I understand it's obviously a false, it's a fictional country.
Yeah.
But does it sound good? Do people really think this sounds like a good accent? I mean, I'm not saying it sounds like a bad accent. It doesn't sound like a
I
caricature. It doesn't sound like something offensive or anything like that. But is people like actively saying, "Oh yeah, this is a really good acting performance of an accent here"?
no, I'm
Like
not
it
not to
just
that
doesn't
extreme,
feel
but it's
like
definitely
anything to focus on.
I mean, no, I don't think anyone's saying it's like amazing acting, but I think what I've seen consistently is that as soon as that accent comes out, first thing, hearing that voice, knowing
Yeah.
it's Robert Downey Jr. doesn't really sound like him, and he's
No.
not, and it doesn't sound like kind of a caricature thing. I've seen consistently people saying, "Oh, that sounds doesn't sound bad. That sounds kinda
But it's interesting.
cool." So, no one has negative I haven't seen a negative, like, "Ugh, that sounds awful," reaction to the accent. I've seen people, like, immediate, like, surprise, like, "Oh, that sounds way better than I thought it was gonna sound," because 'cause I'm sure people had a pretty negative idea of what it would sound
Yes.
like, or that it would sound too much like Robert Downey Jr. that they couldn't, you know, take themselves
Yeah.
out of realizing that it's him. So,
Look, it's interesting. We will see what comes of this movie. Will it work? Will it work in resetting the MCU as seems to be being promised? Will it just be a bit of a hot mess? Who's to say at
yeah.
the moment? But I think there we go for this little discussion today. All
Yeah.
our social media, Patreon links and a donation as well are in the description of this episode. I suppose it's not an episode, though, is it really? You can tell we used to podcasts here
Yeah.
on its wonderful podcast. You can, of course, subscribe and ding your notification bell on this It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel, or subscribe to the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed on all major platforms, wherever you may prefer to be at there. For Morgan hasn't seen the main show celebrating old movies every Friday, It's a Wonderful Podcast itself, and our TV-based things on a Monday, currently discovering Dawson's Creek and diving into Doctor Who. That being said, we do have one last thing to do. And I think given that we've just talked about it, maybe try
No.
Downey Jr.'s Latvian accent to count us down.
Now everyone's gonna say this is terrible. Even know how to I don't even know what. 3, 2, 1.
Very, very Eastern European. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.